Join Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. I knew nothing about this, Rick. In the break, he was telling us about this craziness that was going on in Bloomington yesterday. I had no idea because I was not downtown at all. But there was some wacko down in the storm drain that they were trying to get out, that they thought he had a rifle and warning if you hear loud bangs, shelter in place. And I'm like, what? That is nuts. And they got him out of there and arrested and whatnot. But that's a new one.
Every day, another adventure. You never know.
I'm telling you.
Just hold on tight.
Holy smokes. Speaking of craziness, how about a 16.5-point spread for Indiana at Cincinnati, which I expected Cincinnati to be the favorite, but my gosh, man, they think Indiana's terrible.
Yeah, I just checked DraftKings, actually, Jim. It's up to 17 on DraftKings, so it's going the other direction. I think it's a combination of things. One, Cincinnati's playing at home. They did play well at Arkansas in their one road game. The other two games, they didn't really beat anybody. Wasn't Miami ahead of them at halftime, or at least into the second quarter on Saturday?
They're always a second half team,
right? And I guess people have looked at IU's 3 wins and not been impressed by any of them. So we'll see. They're going to have to play better than they played in all 3 games. Especially on defense. That was the biggest concern I had from the game on Saturday, giving up a lot of big running plays and getting beaten pass coverage a couple of times, guys that are supposed to be better than that, cornerbacks, safeties that are supposed to be better than that. But if they don't turn it over and they actually kick the ball off in bounds, they have a chance.
Yeah. And the kicker, the kicking game has been so good for them. It's funny that it's also
those 2 kickoffs. That led to what, 10 points?
Yep.
You can't do that, man. You can't, when you're a team like Indiana, where you're always battling in the margins, you've got to be great on special teams. You're not going to have the talent to be good all the time on offense or defense because you're not going to have the personnel on the line, but you can have good special teams, and you can't have your kickoff guy kicking the ball out of bounds twice, especially late in the game when it really matters, and giving the other team field position at the 35-yard line. That just can't happen.
No, especially when that's your only job.
Correct.
If you're not your only job is kickoffs.
Right.
Man, you've got 55 yards.
Right.
Hell, a field goal kickers, I don't know how wide goalposts are exactly, but they're not that wide. You've got 55 yards to keep it in play. I don't understand that. Yeah, that should never, ever happen, but it does.
Yeah, you can look at IU season really any way you want to. If you want to be impressed by the grit that they've shown to come back 3 times and win, it's out there. If you want to give credit to them for making plays every time they really had to make a play, they've made plays. They haven't given into adversity. You can do that. But if you want to be concerned by some of the things you've seen, you can do that. I see a lot of good things. I see some decent young players on defense for sure. The defense, I think, is better than in many ways better than last year. The offense is certainly better than last year. And I like some of the things I saw on offense against Western. Josh Henderson ran the ball with authority. He looked like a guy who could run through tackles. He hit that one-handed catch on that pass that he turned into some nice yardage. Cam Camper looks like a dependable receiver. Donovan McCulley looks like he's going to eventually be a player. He just needs reps. But they've got to tighten down a lot of areas against Cincinnati, because Cincinnati, has better person. This is the best personnel they've probably played this year.
12 receivers, 12 different receivers caught a pass, which is good in the sense of that means you have a lot of weapons and you can do a lot of different things.
Yeah, 3 different tight ends, right? Bamba got involved. Aaron Steinfeld made a big catch.
First catches for those guys.
Yeah, big. Barner, Matthews had a nice – they've got guys. And it's good that Connor Bazelak has enough trust in all of them to throw them all the ball. That's got to make it harder for the defense when they're scheming against you, to know that the quarterback's comfortable throwing to any receiver that's on the field at any time. It's not just a 2 or 3 man operation, which we have seen some, in the past. So, and the running game, it's gotten a little bit better every week. Now Carpenter's out, so they're down 2 starters. But I thought it was a great story. The kid from West Washington who was 3rd string, and probably is Caleb Murphy. That's his name. First kid from West Washington in any sport to ever get a scholarship to a Big Ten school. And you could tell after the game how emotional he was, and he did an okay job. So those are the kind of stories that I kind of gravitate towards in college football these days. There's so much cynicism and stuff going on that this is a kid who I'm sure it's a thrill of a lifetime for him to go to IU. And then now he finally gets his chance at IU, and he plays and they win the game. And that meant everything to him. Oh,
I can imagine. West Washington, just a school out in the middle of the country.
On the road between Salem and Mitchell.
That's it, man. I was going to say you pass it right there. But yeah, it's those schools they don't get to experience that very often. So it's like being Mr. Basketball, basically for those guys. But Indiana, defensively, they look just so porous, especially in the second half. They gave up 33 yards rushing in the first half, but like 133 in the second half. And it was like 2 different teams. And these were chunk runs of 59 yards, I think 29, too many long runs that they allowed and allowed Western Kentucky to get back into easy scoring position. And they do that to Cincinnati. Cincinnati will pick them apart.
You're right. And wasn't the quarterback at one point like 28 for 31 or something? It was ridiculous.
Oh, he was throwing 80% the whole game, it seemed like.
Yeah. They got a nice offense. They got a nice scheme, but it shouldn't be that good. You got to get a better pass rush. You got to make the guy uncomfortable. You got to get some blitzes that work and knock him down a few times and, make him question how secure he should be standing back in there and just throwing the ball. I mean, they didn't make him uncomfortable enough until overtime. They played a great defensive stand in overtime. So when it mattered, they came through. I mean, when they needed to make a winning play, they made a winning play.
Indiana's offense, however, in the overtime basically stunk, and Charles Campbell saved them with that bomb field goal. But I was like, woo, they did nothing right in that overtime period to help themselves win that game. They did everything to lose that game at the end, or not lose because they had stopped Western already, but they did everything to not take advantage of that. I was like, oh my God, are they going to get out of field goal range?
It was questionable. I mean, what you worried about was, did they get too conservative? And, they knew they just needed a field goal, so they were just going to run the ball, try and position it in the middle of the field to make the field goal as short as possible. And they didn't really, and then it just, went backwards on them. And luckily Campbell saved the day. And then nobody would be, that would have been the story about what were they doing on offense when all they had to do was gain 3 or 5 yards and kick an easy field goal. So good for Campbell, who, Tom Allen had been on pretty hard the week before. And he responded to coaching, and he's also a 5th-year guy who's stuck with the program. I'm sure he could have left at some point, and he's a Tennessee kid, I believe, and he invested in IU football at a time when it wasn't the greatest place to invest in the country, and so he's rewarded for it. Good for him.